At 35,000 feet above the Atlantic Ocean, most passengers noticed Flight Attendant Elena Prescott's scars before anything else. The burn marks traced across her left cheek and down her neck told a story she never shared. Some passengers looked away, uncomfortable. Others stared with curious pity. She moved through the cabin of Horizon Airlines Flight 807 with practiced efficiency, her scarred hand steady as she served beverages, her makeup carefully applied but unable to completely hide the evidence of whatever had happened to her. Elena keeps to herself, First Officer Lauren Whitaker had whispered to Captain Adrian Holt during pre-flight. Been flying with us for 2 years, never talks about the scars. Professional as they come, but there's something military about how she moves. The morning departure from New York had been routine. Elena had performed the safety demonstration with mechanical precision, her voice clear despite the curious stares from passengers who wondered about her story. As they reached cruising altitude, Elena began beverage service in first class. She moved down the aisle with a cart, her scarred fingers pouring coffee and orange juice with unwavering steadiness, despite the occasional uncomfortable glances from passengers. "Coffee or juice?" she asked each passenger, her tone neutral, accustomed to the stares. Business executive Jonathan Mercer glanced up from his laptop, his eyes briefly catching on the scars before looking away. "Coffee, black." Elena poured without comment, her face a mask of professional courtesy. She'd learned long ago that explanations only led to more questions, questions she couldn't answer. 3 rows behind, retired Colonel Everett Langford studied her movements with the trained eye of someone who'd spent decades evaluating personnel. The scars looked familiar, combat injuries, perhaps, but something about her bearing seemed even more familiar. "Excuse me, miss," called Rachel Keaton from seat 3A, her voice slightly hesitant as she tried not to stare at Elena's neck. "This orange juice tastes off." Elena nodded efficiently. "I'll get you a fresh one immediately." She moved to the galley to restock her cart. As she reached for supplies in the overhead compartment, she had to stretch upward. Her uniform blouse caught on the compartment edge and lifted, revealing her lower back. Captain Adrian Holt, walking through the cabin on his routine passenger greeting, happened to glance over at that exact moment. He froze. There, displayed across Elena's scarred skin, was a Navy SEAL Trident surrounded by spread wings, with Oppresso Liber inscribed below. This wasn't just any military tattoo. This was the mark of Delta Force, the most classified special operations unit in existence. His breath caught. The scars suddenly made perfect sense. Female operator, combat injuries. The timeline would be right. He thought of the classified operations he'd supported during his military years. Missions where operators came back changed, marked by experiences that could never be discussed. Elena straightened her uniform and turned, unaware that her carefully guarded secret had been exposed. She handed Rachel the fresh orange juice with the same professional smile, the burn marks on her neck catching the cabin light. "Will there be anything else?" Captain Holt watched her continue her service, now seeing what he'd missed before. The way she scanned the cabin wasn't casual observation, it was tactical assessment. Her positioning allowed maximum visual coverage while maintaining easy access to exits. The scars weren't just evidence of trauma, they were badges of survival. "Captain," Flight Attendant Camille Harlow approached, "you look like you've seen a ghost." Holt shook his head slowly. "I think I just understood something incredible." Elena returned to the galley area to organize supplies. As she reached up again for napkins, her blouse shifted once more. This time, Colonel Langford saw it too. The trident, the wings, The Latin motto. Combined with the combat scars, the picture became crystal clear. Langford had been intelligence liaison for special operations during his final years of service. He knew exactly what that mark meant. More importantly, he remembered the mission reports, the classified operations in Afghanistan, the female operator who'd completed impossible extractions, who'd been injured in the final mission that ended her operational career. "Dear God," he whispered. Elena sensed his stare and turned. For just a moment their eyes met, the look of someone who'd seen too much, recognizing the same in another. Langford straightened and offered a subtle nod, not casual courtesy, military acknowledgement between warriors. Elena's eyes widened slightly. She'd been recognized. Captain Holt approached the galley area, his expression serious but respectful. "Miss Prescott," he said quietly, "might I have a word?" Elena's training kicked in. Assess, evaluate, respond. Her scarred hand moved almost imperceptibly to her side before she caught herself. "Of course, Captain." He gestured toward a quieter area near the rear galley. "I couldn't help but notice your tattoo. That's not something you see every day." Elena's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I'm not sure what you mean, sir." "The trident and wings, Oppresso Liber, Delta Force identification. Those aren't accident scars, are they? They're combat injuries." The color drained from Elena's face. For the first time since he'd known her, her perfect composure cracked. Colonel Langford approached them, having observed the exchange. "Sergeant Elena Prescott, Operation Ghost Protocol, the extraction that went wrong. You got your team out, but the building came down on you." Elena straightened unconsciously into military posture, her scars suddenly seeming less like disfigurement and more like medals. "How do you—" He read the classified reports. "Female operator, impossible missions. You saved lives at the cost of your own body. Those scars aren't something to hide. They're proof of extraordinary courage." Other crew members began to notice the unusual gathering. Camille moved closer, seeing Elena in an entirely new light. Captain Holt's voice carried new authority. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced to the first-class cabin, "I'd like you to meet someone extraordinary." Elena shook her head quickly. "Captain, please don't." "But for 3 years," he continued, "this woman has served you with grace, despite the stares, despite the questions about her appearance you've never asked. What you don't know is that those scars were earned saving American lives in the most classified operations our military conducts." The first-class cabin fell silent. The same passengers who'd looked away from her scars now couldn't tear their eyes away, but for entirely different reasons. "Sergeant Elena Prescott," Langford added, his voice carrying through the cabin, "Delta Force operator. The motto on her back reads, 'To free the oppressed.' The scars you see are evidence of missions so classified that the people she saved will never know her name." Daniel Calloway slowly closed his laptop. "You mean those scars are from—" "Combat," Holt said simply. "She's one of the most elite soldiers this country has ever produced. That tattoo, it's earned, not given." Elena stood perfectly still, her scarred face no longer something to hide, but something to honor. One by one, passengers began to stand, not out of pity for her appearance, but out of respect for what it represented. Jonathan Mercer was first, his earlier discomfort replaced by awe, then Rachel, then others throughout first class. Elena's eyes filled with tears she'd trained herself never to shed. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice carrying new strength. Captain Holt stepped forward. "Sergeant Prescott, would you honor us by joining me in the cockpit for the remainder of our flight?" Elena straightened, her scarred face catching the light not as disfigurement, but as valor earned in places most people couldn't imagine. "It would be my honor, Captain." As they walked forward through the cabin, every passenger stood in respect. The same people who'd stared at her scars now saw them for what they truly were, the visible proof of invisible courage. From what city are you watching this incredible story today? Tell us in the comments below. Subscribe to Tales of Valor for more stories of heroes whose scars tell stories of extraordinary sacrifice. Sometimes the marks we carry aren't wounds. They're medals earned in service to others.